Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Meditation and Spiritual Practice. Um, we are in the week of just about to finish the book of Exodus, and the book of Exodus is finishing with the completion of the Mishkan of the sacred sanctuary, the portable sanctuary in the desert, and with that completion, of course God's presence descends into the sanctuary, just illuminating it for Moses and for the people. And then the book closes, and we get ready to go into all the details of the sacrifices and the priestly service and everything that goes on in the temple um, in the book of Leviticus. But for today, I want to lift up a teaching from the Mea Sholoach, the Ishbitzer Rebbe, who notices that in this parsha, at the conclusion of every single little section of completing the Mishkan, it says Tziva Adonai et Moshe, and as God commanded Moses. And what the Ishbitzer Rebbe teaches is that um, when that statement is said in the narrative in the Torah, Moses is hearing it real time in the moment. So a particular he's inside a particular piece gets completed in the sanctuary, and all of a sudden kind of the reality, whether you want to hear it as a voice, as an auditory voice, or as an inner voice that pervades everything, it says, as God commanded Moses. In some sense, this affirmation, this reality that's opening up, that this creation of this part of the Mishkan is something that is an expression of the Holy One um, through the prophet. So Moses isn't just making this up. He's not just doing this. All the people that are inside creating the sanctuary experience this as a divine expression. And the Mea Sholoach teaches, he says that he notices that on the very last completion of which is the hangings of the curtains at the very end, or the stakes that get put down, it doesn't say as God created, commanded Moses. And he makes the comment of why it doesn't say that is because at the completion of the sanctuary, Moses is on the outside, right? For every bit of of the creation, you're on the inside, you're erecting this, you're doing this, and inside that sanctuary, that affirmation of God's presence into what he's doing is highlighted. But finally, he's getting ready, and he's doing the last staking down of the curtains, and he's on the outside of the sanctuary, because when you finish something and you're on the outside, then he doesn't hear that voice. And so what the Mea Sholoach says on that is, he says that that is the way that human consciousness tends to deal with holiness, which is to say that holiness, God's presence, is a lot of the time locked up in our sanctuaries. And those can be our physical sanctuaries, like to say, oh, it's when I only go to temple that I experience this incredible moment. This week we're going to have Soul Spark Shabbat on Friday night. And Soul Spark, for many of us, is really this intense experience of God's presence in a sanctuary, in a place. But a lot of the times we kind of think, okay, God's presence is found, we're going to only be able to have that experience in this venue. It's going to be in the sanctuary, or maybe it's a sense that we have, or it's a concept or an idea in our mind. This aspect of my life is a place where I can experience God. Maybe it's a walk in nature, or a sunset, or all of those things that we're kind of used to being able to let in, where holiness is more apparent. So the Mea Sholoach is saying, that is the nature of our consciousness is to limit God in some ways, to limit it to concepts and ideas that we draw around where God should be. And the reality is, as we know, that God is in everything and every moment, from the most mundane, um, changing our parents' bedpan, to getting our kids ready for school, to um, even our work and how we might be interacting or dealing with somebody else. All of those places are, if we were to open our minds to it, the glory of God would be shining just as strongly as it is in the synagogue or the sunset or in any of those places. And so he's teaching that just because Moses wasn't hearing God's presence when he finished that piece because he was on the outside didn't mean that God's presence wasn't just as magnificent as it was when he was inside. So, this teaching, I mean, this is really what I think categorize the insight of the Baal Shem Tov and the opening of early Hasidic teaching, which is that there's no place empty of God. Ein od milvado. No place empty. Every moment. So, when the Kotzker Rebbe is asked, where do you find God? And he says, any place that you let God in. The responsibility then becomes on us to open up our own limited consciousness and mind and begin to experience that glory of God. And we're going to be exploring this idea, specifically not just about God being in all places, but the way in which our own consciousness closes off and opens up as we get closer to Passover and the Passover story, because that's the whole story from the Hasidic perspective of the liberation from Egypt or Mitzrayim, of the narrow place, is really about that liberation and that opening in consciousness to transcend our own limited perspectives of where God can be found and not found, and instead open to the reality that's present with us all the time. So let's find a comfortable place to sit where we can be still, have our bodies be still for a period of time. And we'll begin with a melody, and then that will open up to some silence with some instruction. Hi da da, 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 hi da da. Yai da da, yai da da, ai 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 da da, yai da da. Hi, 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 hi. As you sing, pay attention to that vibration, to the vibration in the chest and in the body of the melody as you sing it, and open to that sense that God's presence is here in the vibration, in the melody, in the moment. Hi, 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 hi. 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 I die die, I die die. 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 You just begin by bringing your attention to your breath, to noticing where the inhale reaches its maximum, begins, enters the nostrils, enters the mouth. Notice the way that the breath expands in the body through the chest or the belly, reaches its maximum length, and then switches over to an exhale, following the breath as it leaves the body, and noticing that moment where the exhale reaches its maximum length and switches over to an inhale. Again, paying attention to that movement of breath and the expansion of the body on the inhale, and then following another cycle through on the exhale. As you pay attention to the inhale and exhale, expand your awareness to include your entire body. So at the same time that you're noticing the breath moving in and out, you're also aware of the contact of your bottom and the chair, where the bottom of your feet meet the ground, the length of your legs, the distance between the bottom of your spine and the top of your head, the way the arms hang out of the shoulder sockets and the resting place of your hands, the air as it touches your face. In this moment, allow yourself to notice all that's happening. The movement of breath, expanding, contracting, aware of the entire body in space and the pressure that gravity pulls on your body, creating pressure on your bottom, your feet, your hands. And at the same time that you're present with breath and body, also let your attention include the sounds in your space and outside of it. My voice, sounds in your room, sounds outside. So that at the same time that you open your attention to sound You're also aware of body, and you're staying connected to that movement of breath. And open to the possibility that everything in our field of awareness is an expression of divine life, energy, presence. Everything from our breath to the sensations in our body to the sounds around us, everything is like an instrument in a divine symphony. Just as when we listen to a symphony orchestra, we open our minds and hear the totality of the music, every instrument working together. Let your mind be open, attention present to all of the instruments of this moment. Breath, body, sounds. Open to the possibility that being a divine instrument, an expression of God in this divine symphony, that everything in our field of experience has infinite depth. We may have our surface experience of breath or heat or tingling in certain places in our bodies, but that is just the surface of the divine life and energy that infuses and is present in every part of our experience. So when we're present to the divine symphony with this awareness, to opening up to the all of the moment, we are also open to the depth of the moment. We're open to what we are experiencing and perceiving is only the surface, is only the iceberg of an infinitely deep presence. And even as we may have thoughts that arise in the mind about this or that, even the very energy in our brains that give rise to those thoughts is also an expression of a divine instrument. It's also part of the symphony. And as soon as we are aware of a particular thought, a particular sensation, and we notice that our minds contract and focus around that particular thought or sensation. As soon as you are aware that you're not listening to the symphony anymore, but instead focused on a particular instrument, acknowledge its divine nature, its depth, its rightful place as an instrument in the symphony of this moment. And then open your attention beyond it to include not just it as an instrument, but all the other ones in this moment. So there is no distraction. There's no part of our experience that's not supposed to be happening right now. Ein od milvado, there is no place empty of God. And what we bring to the moment is our willingness to open our attention, to be present for the entire symphony, breath and depth. In fact, the deeper we even go into this awareness of all being an expression of the divine symphony, we may start to forget ourself as a separate being with labels and boundaries that we call by our name. And instead, everything that we would normally call us is just another expression in the unfolding divine symphony. And we can recognize our experience as that without having to label it as my experience. I'm going to be quiet for a period of time and just invite us to keep practicing paying attention to the moment, letting our breath be the anchor, the heartbeat, the drum of the symphony. That no matter where we are in a given moment, we're always aware of the breath. At the same time that we expand our attention to include everything in our experience as an expression of the divine symphony. Thank you, everyone. Anybody has any questions or comments or anything that you'd like to bring? Susie, please do.
That was wonderful. Thank you. So my question is, do you believe God is anything other than non-localized awareness?
So yes, just to though make sure that when we say non-localized awareness, nothing other than or but, that's no nothing, or that is nothing, meaning that this, I think when we're, this mystery that we refer to as consciousness, awareness, is infinitely deep, infinitely intelligent, and infinitely present. So if we're going to apply and infinitely loving, if we want to apply all those things to nothing but awareness, non-localized awareness,
Yes.
then go for it. Yes.
Okay.
But you know, again, with everything that we have to say with this is it's not localized and it's localized. You
And
know,
okay.
right? You know, there's no, we can't put any kind of boundaries around it and say it's not this, but this, you know, this, but not this. So,
Thank you.
just to kind of riff a little bit more on that, which is, I think so important, is one of the things that we begin to open to as we deepen our own path of meditation or contemplation is that this the God that we've been raised with, or most of us have been raised with, as either something that is outside of us, you know, or an idea, or a concept, or a something, is really not the reality. It's just not the reality. That's why I'm comfortable at saying mostly, you know, the God that you don't believe in, I don't believe in either. Um, because what we're, you know, what we're speaking about here, when you mention that and start to talk about awareness, it really is the very, very fabric of our own existence. It's not something separate from us. It's right here. You know, it's like in the book of Deuteronomy when it says the Torah is not far from you. It's right here, right? It's not in heaven. It's right here in your heart, in your mouth, so that you can do it, so that you can live it. It's this kind of deep teaching is a part of you and you're a part of it. And so if in any ways you have an idea about God, or when we talk about divine or anything like that, that has boundary to it, if your idea of that has boundary, then what Maimonides or the Rambam would say is you're engaging in idolatry. He was really radical that way,
Yeah.
13th century. piece. Basically, any idea you have about God is idolatry. What's idolatry? It's not just worshiping a statue. Idolatry is anything that in my own mind awareness being anything that is limited or that is finite that I attribute as being God or worthy of worshiping. Anything that is finite or limited that I want to and somehow direct my life around, my attention around, my whatever it is, that itself is idolatry. And that can even, and as we can look at, we can probably safely say that most of the way that people practice and engage in religion, in Judaism and in every other tradition, is idolatry. It doesn't mean, and that's probably one of the reasons why we see that religion is really responsible in many ways. It's not religion itself, but the way that people practice religion idolatrously is responsible for all the violence, all the horror that we see in the world, because people are able to take their own limited ideas of whatever it is and attribute it to the ultimate, to God. This is a holy war. This is I'm doing God's work here as I justify whatever my actions are. Dennis?
I just, when you said that, I was wondering, even naming God would be idolatry, to put a name on it.
Well, it would be if you were able to say that this is the sole name of God. But if in some ways, if you were to say that God has no bounds, which means that I can attribute a lot of names to God. In fact, there's no end to the amount of names of God that I can call, just in the same way that I might call, my beloved, not only their name, but sweetie or honey or, or all of these different, places that is just this, there's no, and I remember, I forgot who it was, but I did a eulogy, a funeral for somebody who was known in his family because he called everybody he loved by like 20 different names. He just constantly would bring out all these names of affection. There was no kind of end to the naming of that. So I would say that yes, Dennis, naming can be idolatrous, but it doesn't have to be, depending on if we're aware that the name is not the thing. Go ahead, Maury.
So the irony is that the idolatry leads to all the bad things that people do and all the good things that they do. And it's sort of, because there is that justification that this is what we were, how we're commanded to be, or, however it's said in different points of view or different religions. It's so hard to get away from that.
It is. I mean, I might even say if we were to really dig down and this is, I'm just imagining, because of course I can never know, none of us can ever know any person's kind of inner reality. But I want to make a guess that even if somebody relates to God in an idolatrous way, like God is a presence up there, it's some idea in my head, but I look at, my tradition, my religious tradition or whatever, that is about love and is about that this presence up here wants me to love my neighbor, right? And wants me to do it. I think that that there is a deeper, more natural human awareness about the reality of our connection with one another, to which that loving my neighbor resonates as something that is a true expression of the connection, meaning that, and that what is ultimately what's motivating me to do acts of kindness, or acts of justice in the world. Even though I might have an idea that my God out here wants me to do this, I'm going to make the guess or belief that that for many, many people, even though I may hold that idea intellectually, that, you know, idolatrous idea kind of intellectually, I am also deeply motivated by an inherent awareness that I have as just being a human being and a whole and having a soul and, like, you know, connect and I know we don't have a soul, but being a deeply connected to creation, that even if I wouldn't name my inherent connection with creation in words that's motivating my love my neighbor as myself, I think that that is a big part of what people is part of people's good that they do in the world. So I'm going to just make the guess here, statement that it's not their idolatrous belief that's what's responsible for that good in the world, but instead it's more about that their idolatrous belief is not getting in the way and maybe even is reinforcing a natural awareness that they have of the connection in life, and that's what's motivating that. Sergio.
Thank you, Rabbi. So going back to my notes for your instruction on the 13th, it did feel to me like there was an actual God that was doing the revelation at Mount Sinai, and then an instruction to contain in a Mishkan this boundaryless infinity. And so I'm trying to synthesize how that could be that there something did reveal itself at Mount Sinai, but really a boundaryless infinity doesn't reveal itself.
Beautiful. Such a great and question that, you know, I think puts at the heart of a lot of our paradox of human consciousness, which is the paradox of how is it that we can be both be able to be present to the infinite, that we can have a sense of the reality in our life of boundlessness, of God, of reality, of whatever we want to call it, and at the same time have this dualistic consciousness in which we see things as not one expression of divine, but our usual day-to-day reality is that we see things as separate, as two, as three, as four. There's me, you, there's this and that. I couldn't go through my life without that awareness of separation, you know, to some extent. So that's a paradox in human consciousness. And one midrash to explain that is plays with the word for human being, Adam or Adam, and says that Adam is actually a contraction of two ideas. One is dam, which means blood, and that really refers to kind of the finite body animal sense of who we are, which is all about you know, all about duality, all about survival, all about the me, you know, all those things that we need to survive. And we should in no way think that there's anything bad about that, 100%. But then also in Adam, there's not just Dam, that blood, there's also the Aleph. And the Aleph being the silent letter, being the letter that has no way that you can express it without a vowel attached or another letter attached, that is symbolic of the boundless one, of the God consciousness, of that aspect of us that is infinite. And both of these are present. So when we talk about the story of Sinai and the Mishkan, we can, I want to make sure that as we're talking about the story, we're talking about it not only as a story in time that happened, whether you want to believe it literally or not, but it's also a description of that dualistic human consciousness that we are always experiencing. So on one hand, there is the revelation at Sinai, which is, as you said, boundless, you know, completely. But the reality was that the people, because of the nature of dualistic consciousness, could not live that infinite reality in their finite lives, right? They couldn't live it, just as it's so difficult for us also to do that. So God, and it even shows, because before, when God just gave it, what did the people do? They took all that energy and they got scared, and then they built a golden calf. So God had to give the second temples, which instead of were inscribed with the finger of God, the second tablets on Yom Kippur were actually inscribed with Moses's hand. So now we have Torah and the experience and the Mishkan that is in some sense this intermediary or this containment for the divine presence. So what it really is about saying is that yes, it sometimes happens where we're just minding our own business and doing our thing, and something in life, hits us, and we are experiencing God's presence in that moment. It's rare, but it happens sometimes, it just kind of blows us away. Some amazing synchronicity, some amazing whatever, there it is. But a lot of the time, what we have to do is create space for it. We have to say, I need to create a mishkan, a sanctuary, a tabernacle, in order for this presence to be here. So how do I do that? Well, I might turn on my Zoom at 9 o'clock, on Tuesday morning, and say, okay, here's a space where I'm going to open some Torah, where I'm going to pay attention inside, and I'm going to open to letting that divine presence in. And that's really that mishkan. So in some ways, it's not that the mishkan or setting a space in order for divine presence to be is not a comment on the divine presence. It's more a comment on our inability in our finiteness to open to that infiniteness without intention, without specific, without making some kind of boundary for that infinite to be, for us to touch that infinite. So it's really what you're bringing also, it's a really important, I think, Judaism in general has a lot of deep wisdom and teaching on the importance of boundaries to open us to the boundless. Boundaries to open us to the boundless. Okay, well, thank you everybody for a beautiful, beautiful morning. And remember, this is our third weekend of the month, which is jam-packed with contemplative practice experiences. Soul Spark at 6:30 p.m. Jerusalem Shabbat, another meditative service at 9:30 a.m. on Saturdays, and then Sunday morning at the JCC in person, 9:30 a.m. I'll be there for us to have really this kind of a meditation space, but in person where we can hear our voices and be together. So hope to see you for any and all. Oh, and Ellen has an announcement. Yes.
I have an announcement. And for those of you who want to help with all of our decisions, come today at 5 o'clock at the Packer Library at the Temple. And we will go through some exciting ideas that you can take part in.
Right. And all of our decisions means the decisions of the spirituality committee. So specifically, out of all the temple programming, what kind of stuff do we want to bring and discuss that have to do with these kinds of programs?
Yes, we need your help and your input. So come on over.
Great. And we'll even have a little meditation together too.
Oh, good. Okay.
Like we'll start it out with 5 or 10 minutes. So get there at 5. All right.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.